Had you ever eaten a whole pizza by yourself? Yes, I had eaten too much. Had she ever laughed so hard that she cried? Yes, she had laughed like a hyena. Had he ever tried to cook before? No, he had never cooked anything. Had they finished their work before the deadline? No, they had wasted time instead. Had you ever fallen asleep in class? Yes, I had snored in history class. Had she ever forgotten her friend's birthday? Yes, she had forgotten 3 years in a row. Had he ever gone to the gym before? No, he had only talked about it. Had we ever planned a trip before going? No, we had always packed last minute. Had they practiced before performing? No, they had panicked on stage. Had you ever sent a text to the wrong person? Yes, I had messaged my boss instead of my friend. Had she ever spoken before thinking? Yes, she had embarrassed herself many times. Had he ever finished a book before the movie? No, he had always watched the movie first. Had they ever done their homework on time? No, they had copied it last minute. Had you ever walked into the wrong room? Yes, I had sat there for 10 minutes. Had she ever Googled before asking? No, she had asked first. Had he ever learned from mistakes? No, he had repeated them. Had they ever arrived on time? No, they had always been late. Had you ever texted while sleepwalking? Yes, I had confused everyone. Had she ever danced in public? Yes, she had fallen while dancing. Had he ever flirted before? Yes, but he had failed badly. Had we ever trained our pet? No, it had trained us instead. Had they ever played pranks? Yes, they had scared their teacher. Had you ever lost your phone? Yes, I had found it in the fridge. Had she ever forgotten her password? Yes, she had reset it 10 times. Had he ever eaten expired food? Yes, he had regretted it immediately. Had we ever locked ourselves out? Yes, we had waited outside for hours. Had they ever failed a test? Yes, they had guessed every answer. Had you ever worn mismatched shoes? Yes, I had walked around all day like that. Had she ever tried online dating? Yes, she had deleted the app in one day. Had he ever burned his food? Yes, he had turned it into charcoal. Had we ever sung karaoke? Yes, we had broken everyone's ears. Had they ever watched a horror movie alone? No, they had screamed too much. Had you ever tried meditation? Yes, but I had fallen asleep. Had she ever lost her glasses? Yes, she had found them on her head. Had he ever cooked for his family? Yes, and they had ordered pizza after. Had we ever gone skydiving? No, we had only dreamed about it. Had they ever taken a wrong flight? Yes, they had landed in the wrong country. Had you ever fallen in public? Yes, and I had pretended it was part of my dance. Had she ever crashed a wedding? No, but she had considered it. Had he ever tried extreme sports? Yes, he had broken his skateboard immediately. Had we ever seen a celebrity in real life? Yes, and we had screamed like crazy. Had they ever stolen food from the fridge? Yes, and they had denied it. Had you ever argued with a parrot? Yes, and it had won the argument. Had she ever gone viral on social media? No, but she had tried really hard. Had he ever danced in the rain? Yes, and he had slipped instantly. Had we ever played hide and seek as adults? Yes, and someone had actually disappeared for hours. Had they ever dressed up as superheroes? Yes, they had embarrassed themselves at a party. Had you ever eaten something too spicy? Yes, and I had cried for an hour. Had she ever tried to fix something and made it worse? Yes, she had broken it completely. Had he ever gone camping? Yes, and he had forgotten the tent. Had you ever slept through an alarm? Yes, I had missed my flight. Had she ever tried to bake a cake? Yes, but she had turned it into a rock. Had he ever failed at flirting? Yes, he had scared her away. Had they ever sent a message to the wrong group? Yes, and they had deleted it too late. Had you ever forgotten your umbrella on a rainy day? Yes, I had gotten soaked. Had she ever called her teacher mom? Yes, and she had never recovered from the embarrassment. Had he ever broken a chair by sitting on it? Yes, and everyone had laughed for an hour. Had we ever spent too much money online shopping? Yes, we had regretted it instantly. Had they ever lost their luggage at the airport? Yes, and they had worn the same clothes for a week. Had you ever tried cutting your own hair? Yes, and I had ruined it completely. Had she ever eaten someone else's lunch by accident? Yes, and she had apologized all day. Had he ever used super glue and stuck his fingers together? Yes, and he had panicked for an hour. Had they ever fallen off a treadmill? Yes, and the whole gym had watched. Had you ever forgotten someone's name immediately after meeting them? Yes, and I had called them Buddy for months. Had she ever sent a love letter to the wrong person? Yes, and she had moved to another city out of embarrassment. Had he ever accidentally waved at a stranger? Yes, and he had pretended he was fixing his hair. Had we ever tried to act cool and failed? Yes, we had tripped in front of everyone. Had they ever forgotten to mute their mic in an online meeting? Yes, and they had exposed their snack eating habits. Had you ever tried to impress someone and embarrassed yourself? Yes, and I had wished to disappear. Had she ever gotten lost inside a mall? Yes, and she had called security for help. Had he ever fallen asleep while watching a movie? Yes, and he had woken up during the credits. Had they ever misheard song lyrics and confidently sung them wrong? Yes. And they had believed they were right. Had you ever dropped your phone on your face while lying down? Yes. And I had felt the pain of my mistakes. Had she ever spilled coffee on an important document? Yes, and she had cried for hours. Had he ever walked into a glass door? Yes, and he had blamed the door. Had we ever started a diet and failed on the first day? Yes, we had eaten cake instead. Had they ever gotten stuck in an elevator? Yes, and they had screamed for help. Had you ever forgotten where you parked your car? Yes, and I had walked around for hours. Had she ever mistaken a mannequin for a real person? Yes, and she had apologized to it. Had he ever spoken to a customer service robot thinking it was real? Yes, and he had felt betrayed when he realized.